Allegedly Dave, thanks for joining us, my friend.
You're welcome.
So I wanted to ask you, Allegedly Dave, why Allegedly Dave? Why allegedly? What does that mean? I was curious about that when I first heard it.
I was in the Free Man on the Land movement. Yeah,
okay.
And one thing you get to realise is that the name is a bit of a trap. And so many people started calling themselves commonly known as.
Okay, right, yeah.
And I was being interviewed by this guy in Australia or New Zealand, and every time he interviewed me, I was called something different.
Oh, he messed your name up or something?
No, I was called Dave of the Murphy family one time.
Oh, I see.
Next time I was Dave Starbuck.
Yeah.
And the third time he said, so what do I call you? I'm going to call you Allegedly Dave. And I'm like, hey, that's
kind of a cool name.
So it stuck.
It's interesting, isn't it? The name, the fact that our names are so closely tied to the label of who they think we are in terms of a legal definition of who we are. It's interesting how the way it's all set up is so bizarre, isn't it? Like, really,
it's not bizarre. It's sneaky and very, very clever.
I wonder, because it's not. They tell, like, it's possible to know what they're doing. It's not like they're hiding it, but you can find it out. But it's so. I often think of it like, in terms of legal stuff like this, I always think it would be like if I tried to play basketball against Michael Jordan. You know, he's not doing anything sneaky. He's just a lot better at it than I am.
Yep.
And that's how I think the law, contract law, and all this stuff that you've been studying is similar to that. We just don't know how to play the game, right?
Yeah. Well, the people who wrote the game, have educated you so that you don't know how to play,
right?
And don't even know that you're playing,
and don't even know, right?
Yeah.
And they don't know that you're in the game as soon as you accept some sort of benefit and privilege. Like a birth certificate or like a driver's license or anything.
Even that, you don't. Half the time, you don't know what you're doing because they're speaking one language, you're speaking another that sounds and looks exactly the same. But when you say something, you mean something completely different, and so you end up getting trapped. Yeah,
it's a weird thing, and most people have no idea that all this stuff's going on.
No. So when you with the name, you think you're called Dave Murphy, right? When you're born, they create a corporation in the same name but in all capitals, but it's a different name, but you think it's the same. And so when your bills come in with this Dave Murphy in all capital letters,
you think that's you.
You think that's you, and it's like an overcoat. The government and the corporations can't deal with you, the man.
No. Because corporations are dead.
They're dead.
Right.
So what they can deal with is the corporation in your name.
The legal entity.
And it's like an overcoat. And if you put that overcoat on, now they can grab you and do whatever they want with it, with you in it.
Right. Because you're essentially the captain of the ship.
Yeah.
You're not Dave Murphy. You're the authorized representative of Dave Murphy, really.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. So you're in command of Dave Murphy, but so when they ask you what's your name, that's a trap.
It is a trap. It's identifying. Yeah. The word identify means make the same as.
Right.
So you're making yourself the same as the dead corporation.
Yeah.
Now they can do whatever they want with you.
So what is interesting? Are you familiar with? I mean, you've been studying this for a lot longer than I have, but I got introduced to the guys over at Creditors and Commerce.
Oh, yeah.
Are you familiar with them? Do you know what's going on with those guys? I think one of them's in jail, isn't he? What's his name?
Brandon and
Adams?
Yeah, okay.
Do you know what happened to them?
No, I've been out of that sort of the whole kind of movement thing for a long time. What I do is when I look at something, I learn everything I can about it and learn from that experience and move on. Okay, so what I've learned from that whole thing is that we're in a slave system, right? And we think that we can, if we have the right words or the right documentation or act in a certain way, we can navigate our way through it. But the point is, it's being operated by criminals, and it's not meant for us to win. It's like a casino in some respects. They'll let a few punters win just
to give the illusion to everybody else it's a game, right?
And just the illusion that it's all fair and just and and proper.
Yeah.
It's not. It's if nobody's looking and they think they can get away with it, they'll drop the pretense and just railroad you.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting too because like even that is manifested in the courtroom.
Mhm.
Essentially, the judge is someone who's basically trying to pull the wool over everybody's eyes, because they don't realize that if you don't identify as the name, then if you were to actually win the case in the courtroom full of people like that, it would be a public representation that the whole system is a sham.
Yeah.
So so if you go into court, it seems to me like you have to do it in such a way that it allows you to get what you want, but you have to play the game to make the judge, because the judge's job is to protect the public. So he's got to make sure that nobody else realizes that this is a whole matrix,
yes.
right? So it's like he's dancing on this thing where if it's known that you can pay to get out of your crimes, if they're just monetary crimes, you can get away with.
Not crimes, but
It's
the
like this-
legal infractions, legal violations.
Okay, yeah. It's such a weird thing but I don't know if do the lawyers know what they're doing? Because they're like doctors. They're only really been studied under.
They've been trained in the legal system,
Right.
which is just like the medical system.
Yeah, same thing, right?
Same thing. You probably didn't know that in 2011, a whole bunch of us arrested a judge.
Did you really?
Yeah.
In the United States or in
England.
In England. What
Yes.
happened?
There was a guy who was protesting something called council tax.
Okay.
And he was making a legal challenge to it, and he discovered that that judges are only pretending to be judges.
Okay. Right.
In,
That's what he was saying. This
Yes.
guy. Okay.
And he was asking the judge for his oath, and
Whoa.
and the
That's
judge refused to give it, and he asked him 3 times, and when he refused the 3rd time, he basically said, arrest that man, not that judge, because he's not a judge.
Right. He's not acting in
Arrest
that
that
capacity.
man. And we'd already organised 2 people, one person to be a decoy and another person to go around and actually arrest him.
So where were you? So you were part of this process?
I was part of the organisation for it. Yeah,
and now
so
where were you in a public area?
I was in the courtroom. I was dressed as a lawyer.
The suit and tie and everything.
Suit and tie and
Yeah,
everything.
the briefcase.
I had my laptop, which was streaming live to a radio station.
No way.
And yes, so we had our decoy lunge. The police officers in the court actually went for him, and while they were distracted, somebody else went round, put his hand on the judge's shoulder and said, "You're under arrest. You don't have to say it," and said the whole thing. That judge never sat another case.
Now, what happened to his license?
We don't know. We don't know what happened, but as we've been watching very carefully, and that judge never sat another case after that.
In the courtroom itself that this happened, were there a lot of other people?
Well, we filled the courtroom with our people.
Okay.
And then once it all kicked off, we opened the doors and we had 600 people outside. And
Was this a prominent judge?
Yeah, I'm not sure if prominent, but he.
I mean, 600 people knew about what was going on.
600. Well, we organised this whole
meetup.
Wow.
What year was this?
2011. If you go onto YouTube and type in Birkenhead arrest judge, you'll find videos.
Other people filming and all this?
There was loads of people with cameras in the courtroom filming. Birkenhead arrest judge.
Wow. So what happened to this judge? Is he still practicing?
Wait, he's not sat a case since.
Wow.
So I had a court case maybe a few months after that, and I only brought 20 people with me because I didn't want to do the same thing. But because they knew I was involved in Birkenhead, and it kind of sent ripples around all the judges. Turned up at this court one day, and there were 20 police vans for police outside this court, and there was loads of police inside the court, and they refused to let more than 11 people into the courtroom.
Wow.
Because they knew that if there was 12 people, I could have called for a grand jury.
Yeah, right.
So they would only let 11 people into the courtroom, and they brought in a district judge. But this was for a traffic ticket, essentially. So they brought in a district judge.
This is for someone you were helping, or
No,
or for you?
for me.
For you.
Because I had a speeding ticket.
Okay.
So I wanted to see.
You had an offer.
I wanted to see how I'd do against a judge. So they brought in a district judge, who wanted to play. He was raring to go. He wanted
Really?
to, you can imagine these guys every day going, okay, guilty.
Yeah, it's just rote.
And now he was like up against somebody who wanted to
Tussle a little bit.
play a game of chess with. And it was like a game of chess.
Wow, but does he realize, I mean, I'm sure that like if this, if he doesn't do it properly, then it's bad news for him because people are going to know what's happening here.
More than that, he can be liable himself.
Yeah,
So-
and loses his ability to practice.
These guys are very well trained and they're very experienced at playing this game,
So
especially against people who don't know they're playing.
Oh God, yeah, I bet. For sure. Do you take? Did you get into the creditors and commerce stuff very deeply at all? Because I want to ask you about
the commercial redemption stuff, but I didn't really resonate with it.
Yeah.
The idea of trying to make money or
get your OIDs back.
all this stuff. I didn't, knowing what I know about how money works, I didn't really want to get involved in that.
Yeah. Well, one of their philosophies, which I thought was really interesting, and it seemed to resonate true with me, is that their whole thing was like the judges are there to help you in this process, and their whole thing was like sort of not go to war. Like you're playing on the same team, but you're trying to get what you want, and so you're not going to war with these people, and you're not, advocating, strife and argument and these types of things and all of that. And I like that. I like that. It feels good.
It might feel good, but I disagree that that's what's going on, because you're in a situation where the judge is working. Well, it's not the Crown. I suppose it is still the Crown. Judge is working for the Crown. The lawyers are working for the Crown.
Right.
Everyone is working for the Crown except you.
Mm-hmm.
And they're playing this masquerade, this theatre.
Yeah, it's all just a show, right?
Yeah, so that you think it's all real, and you're going to lose no matter what you do. You're going to lose.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's just time, your attention and time.
Yeah.
You're going to lose out somewhere or other.
Yeah. Yeah. That's part of it. It's no denying that. I mean, it's really interesting when you look into like how tightly connected it all is with like maritime law and how that affects the law of the land and, and how all of these benefits and privileges are tied to us. And, it's so easy. Like they've made life so easy. We can get in a car. We drove here. You can have all of these benefits and privileges. But with each thing, I was just watching a video today about smart meters. And this couple in Texas was trying to get smart meters removed from their house. And they did this whole 30-minute video on their experience, just trying to get the smart meter off of their side of their house. Yeah. And it is, they had to jump through so many hoops. And everything I got to hand it to them. I mean, they've done well.
They have.
It's hard to admit, but
this is 1984, on steroids.
Yeah.
And just because it doesn't look like it, because it's not being televised, it literally is. But people don't recognize it.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're in a system where there's nothing you can do that isn't being regulated.
Yeah. Or taxed
or anything. Yeah.
Or watched or monitored.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, you're trapped. We're prisoners. We're prisoners in open prisons.
Yeah. Working wage slaves, right?
Yeah. And, when the slaves got freed, they weren't really freed. Yeah. Something else took its place called sharecropping. Mm-hmm. Where, I don't know if you're aware of how it worked. It was the farmer would say, "Okay, you're working for yourselves now, but I'll advance you grain and tractors and blah 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 blah.
Right.
And you grow the food. We split it, and you just pay me back what I've advanced you."
Mm-hmm.
And it works out so they never ever get ahead.
Right.
And they're always in debt, and they always carry on in debt.
Mm-hmm.
So they're exactly in the same position, but they think that they're free. This is where we are right now. We're sharecropping.
We think we're free, but we're not.
Well, you know what? 97% of what you earn is taken back off you in taxes, not just in income tax, but tax on food, tax on on your car, tax on your clothes. It's all taken back.
And import tax, import duties, taxes everywhere.
You never get ahead.
And that's sort of the design, is what people don't realize, is that from cradle to grave, it's all monitored, regulated.
Yep.
And I mean, it's one of the things where when I first learned about all this stuff, I was upset. Like, oh my gosh, why would they do this? And how come they're not telling us? And how come it makes it's so impossible for us to sort of put a stake in the sand and let us know? But why is all this stuff happening? I got so mad about it for a long time. And then when I start realizing that it is just a game, and we do have options. It's just that, like in the analogy before with playing basketball against Michael Jordan, it's just that we just need to get better. That's all. We just need to learn more about the game that they've put onto us. Or
play differently.
Play a different game.
Yeah. Just the best way to win a game that you don't know is being played is to change your tactics. Yeah. I live off grid now, and I don't really deal with money.
So how do you live off grid? Because I know on your channel you have some free energy that you've been working on, and do you do mostly solar and free energy stuff, and how grow your food, and how does that work?
Okay, well nowadays I don't eat very much food.
Okay, so there you go. That's
so urinotherapy. Literally, I'm when I'm sort of in my normal situation, I would probably have a piece of fruit every other day. Not, I don't need much.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm not really willing to talk too much about what my situation is. But I live in a motorhome, and I'm sort of, I don't have an address. I'm kind of off the grid. So I don't do anything for money. So I take donations, but I don't ask for them. So literally I get a little bit of money in occasionally, and it's enough. And I only use it mostly to travel around when I help people anyway.
Yeah.
So, and again, most people, if they want me to come to them, they usually have to get me there somehow.
Right.
And that's it.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So extracting yourself from the matrix, man. That's what it's all about.
One of the things that I was going to mention earlier when we were talking about the free man thing, is there's a part of it that many people don't realize, is that you yourself are floated on the stock market. That's what the stock market was all about. Yeah, human stock, the slaves. Yeah. So you yourself right now are floated on the stock market, and there are people who are putting calls and put options on you, betting on what you're going to do, how well you're doing. So when you get a ticket, right, somebody wins. Right. When you get put in prison, somebody wins. Right. Somebody loses. Yeah, it's a big casino game.
Yeah. So that's our commercial energy that they're. So what is are they bundled? Our birth certificates are bundled and sold on the stock exchange? Is that how it works?
I'm not sure if that's the case, like the housing market was.
Yeah.
But I think it might be more of an individual thing that but there are people betting on how you do in your life.
Funny, people say when someone commits murder or commits suicide, and I often just think people think that other people are being put in jail for that, or it's illegal. Why is it illegal to commit suicide? And I just think, well, you can't destroy government property, really, right? I mean, you can't.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it makes total sense, because we have, I don't know how much, I mean, I've heard like estimates of $4 billion our birth certificate is allegedly worth, if you can get access to it. And, we have commercial energy.
You won't ever get access to that money, because it's a kind of notional amount that, you're used as collateral on loans for the government and stuff. So, yes, you are worth a certain amount, but you're not going to be able to get to it. And there are people who say that, there's this process you can do and you can get some of this money.
I've heard of that, yeah.
But again, I think it's more of a casino thing. Yeah. Try your luck. Somebody wins something and everyone else tries to follow and they get caught.
I was doing some research recently of the Are you familiar with the DTC? That's a depository trust company that apparently is carrying the notes and the birth certificates of those that live in North America, Canada. Well, Canada is North America, and England, and I think Australia.
Okay.
And they're located somewhere. They say it's like 55 Water Street in New York City. Is that near where you work?
I worked at 55 Water Street.
No way.
Yes, Standard & Poor's in that.
Yeah,
building.
so they said it was. I think the DTCC is the parent company to the DTC,
Okay.
and apparently the DTC is. That's funny you work there, at that location. But apparently it's one of the richest corporations in the world, and no one knows about it because they're holding these securities of all this commercial energy of these notes and these different. Legal documents and titles and things like that, and birth certificates. I mean, that's amazing.
But you know what? This isn't going to last much longer. It can't last much longer.
You mean the current economic setup?
This whole setup, this slave system, cannot last much longer.
Why do you think?
Well, from a physical standpoint, we're getting to the point where no amount of money forced into this system to keep it afloat is going to keep it afloat. Yeah, we're still in quantitative easing infinity.
Okay, yeah, infinity.
Every time they're putting more and more money into the system to keep it afloat, and it's lasting a shorter and shorter period of time. Yeah, it's a finite system. It's going to have to end at some point. It should have ended years ago, decades ago. Yeah, because I think it's got a finite lifespan, and every so often they have to collapse it and then rebuild it again. And, but just this last time they haven't. They've kept it afloat. They've been keeping it afloat. I think because they want to crash all the monetary systems all at once, and they can't do it while North Korea and Iran have their own monetary system.
Yeah, because they're not wanting anything to do with the dollar right now.
They haven't got a Rothschild-controlled.
And Iraq bank as well, right? And
Iraq has now.
Oh, have they? They've
every country on that list of
bad
rogue nations. Yeah, they were countries that didn't have a Rothschild-controlled bank, and one by one, Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya. And I can't remember.
There's a handful of others, right? Yeah.
The very sort of methodical, been going one after the other, and as soon as they take that country over, they put a bank in there.
Yeah.
So
that's crazy.
So they're waiting until they get all the whole world in that system. They'll collapse it all at once. And then,
Okay, so you're looking to get a little bit closer to the mic if you can.
Yeah.
Or you could just bring it closer to you,
okay.
too. So you're thinking like the last of these countries to get pulled into this world economic system, once all of the countries around the world are doing this, then the whole thing will collapse. Because you can't have it collapse if they're not using...
Yeah, you can't, because then the whole world will be sort of floundering, and these two countries...
That would create a power vacuum for North Korea.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. I was thinking about the other day. This is just... I was thinking to myself, okay, like, I've been doing some research on Hitler and these other controversial figures, and I was thinking to myself, like, it's interesting in terms of North Korea. Everything that I know about North Korea and what goes on there, I was trying to think, do I know anything about North Korea that has where the knowledge or that information didn't originate from somewhere in America? And the answer was no.
No.
And so then I started thinking, okay, I need to look at all this. I don't know anything other than what I've read and what I've looked at and the videos and podcasts I've listened to, but none of that originates from anywhere other than North America. So I have to just say, I don't really know what's going on there. I mean, it's interesting that all of these countries that you're talking about are that don't acquiesce to the dollar and bow down to the almighty dollar, also just so happen to be the same countries that that harbor terrorism, that have WMDs. I mean, isn't that interesting?
What a surprise.
What a shocker, right? So something weird about that, right?
Well, you're right, because the same thing happened to me with Libya. Yeah, I'd always had in my head that Gaddafi was a dictator, tyrant, and all that, and it was a horrible regime over there and everything. Right. And I realised, well, yeah, where did I get that from? And
you analyzed.
I actually started looking into Gaddafi and what it was like to be in Libya,
Uh-huh.
and it's actually completely different to what I thought it was.
Isn't that
You know,
crazy?
People were. It was an amazing place in Libya. You know, you. I can't remember all the details now, but it was like if you wanted to be a farmer, you know, you'd get some land, you'd get seed, you'd get equipment, you'd get money. You know, if you wanted to learn, you know, be a student overseas, the government would pay for that. You know, and you know, if you you know, once you've studied and you wanted to you know, look for a job, you'd actually get paid until you get a job.
Horrible.
Yeah,
We can't have that.
And,
What a horrible
you know,
place.
Petrol was gas was like you know, 50 cents or something for a gallon, and it was an amazing system over there. I read his green book, and he makes sense. And you know,
What's it called? Just the Green Book, or
the
what is
Green
it?
Book, yes.
Interesting.
You know, his ideas were good ideas. But you wouldn't know that if you stuck with the sources from television and the mass media.
Even just stuff on Facebook or stuff, you know, news. I mean, news articles that you see from, you know, alleged sources that are more open-minded and more truth kind of media. Even that kind of stuff. I mean, it's like the information is still originating from here, and it would be nice to have some sort of information from someone who's over there. But we're not. Not only are we not given the truth about stuff, but we're given like half of the information that's really going on.
Yeah.
And so, you know, everything I know about Hitler, about what's his name, what's his name in North Korea? Kim Jong-un.
Yeah.
And all of these, and Saddam Hussein, and all these people. It's like they're all just what I know from America. So we really got to start looking at that.
Yeah, well, when you start looking at all these so-called terrorist, you know, events, you start finding that they're all actors.
Yeah.
You know, and so what can you believe is real?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the truth is nothing. Nothing that comes out of the mass media is real.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing that ever comes out of television is real.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you cannot trust any of it.
Yeah.
And the thing about things like Facebook, and some of the other social media, you get real people from all over the world who are just contributing information. Yes, some of it is controlled and some of it's misinformation, but you know, if you engage your own intuition again, right, you'll know what's true. You'll feel the truth.
Yeah, man, you know, all these events going on around the world. It's like I look at them and I cannot believe that this is pawned off as actual news for a lot of this stuff. You know, it's you know, I look at it and it's like it's almost as if it's like a hook. And it's like you're fishing and you're just trying to hook someone's emotion just a little bit, just to get them to have an opinion about something. If you can get them to have an opinion, then they identify with that opinion, and that opinion is attached to a label, which is attached to another preconceived notion of their already existing thoughts about a subject matter.
Yeah.
And it gets people arguing and thinking that they are their opinions, and nothing ever really comes of it other than just some bizarre fake event that happened on the news and people are talking about it.
Yeah.
You know, it's weird.
We live in Disney World.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if you've been to Disney World.
Is that the one in Florida?
The one in Florida, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't been to that one, no.
Yeah, because, you know, there's not a blade of grass out of place. You know, everything's perfect, everything's been contrived, and it looks wonderful. But there's also this underground complex built under there, yeah, where it's all grimy and dirty, and all the secrets are, you know, all the bad things are going on under there. You know, all the, you know, what they call
the actual
the mind
events.
control stuff going on, and all that. It's all underneath there, but you know, all that underground complex is working to make the above ground look perfect.
Look perfectly
And this
clean.
is where we are.
Yeah.
Most people all the muggles who don't know anything about this, they're living in Disneyland thinking everything's okay and everything is happening by accident, and you know, it's all random.
Yeah.
But those who've seen the dirty, grimy bit, we know that this is all being orchestrated.
And is it the same in London and England, where I mean, it's all. It seems like it's the same. A lot of people don't realize, like in America, and America is. When you learn what that term actually means, it's different than what most people think, and it's different than the United States of America, and there's all these differences in language. But the president of America is the president of a private corporation, and people don't realize that. They think that he's my president. And so this happens, I think this just happens in every country. Isn't it the same, sort of set up the same way? Where the people think that there's this one leader who can actually change their lives and do all these things.
Well, what most people don't realize is, well, first of all presidents have been related to each other.
I've heard that. Is that true?
It's absolutely true, except for one president. I can't remember the name of that one president now.
Oh, you mean American presidents?
Yes.
Kennedy, maybe?
No, it's not Kennedy.
It's like the only
one before that. But they've all been related, and they're all related to the royal family. Okay,
I've heard that as well.
And what's happened around the world is, the British Empire basically went around conquering, and then they gave independence, but they didn't really give independence. They left their bloodline behind,
right,
to continue to rule, sort of secretly.
Right.
So everybody thinks they're independent, but they're not really.
Yeah. So you have this bloodline. So you have England controlling South Africa, Australia, Canada, New Zealand.
But
everywhere.
It's not really England as such. It's a bloodline.
Right.
It's pretty much, and we've traced it down to like 13 bloodlines, 12 or 13 bloodlines that meet in London. Council of 13.
Oh, really? There was a book I read years ago called The Committee of 300.
300, yeah.
But the Council of 13.
Think about it like a pyramid.
Yeah.
So we're right down at the bottom, and as you go further up the top, you got the Council of 300. Then you got the Committee of 300. Then you got the Council of 13. Below the 300, you got the Bilderberg Group, and so on and so on.
And all these organizations.
Yes.
All right, dude. So what do you think is going on? Are you under the thing that these people are reptilians? Are they aliens? Are they non-human hybrids? Are there people above the Bilderberg Group and above all of these organizations that are non-human? What do you think's actually happening? Like, who are these people? Like, who's at the top that we know of?
Yeah, you might, I don't know if you like this, but this is all biblical.
Okay.
Yeah. There's an event in Genesis 6 where fallen angels come down and have sex with women.
The Nephilim.
And form the Nephilim. But it wasn't just the Nephilim. There were other offspring that aren't spoken about.
So from a flat Earth perspective, do you think that, so these angels of God, these Nephilim or whatever the term was for them, whoever they were, was that some sort of interdimensional? Because from a globe Earth perspective, they're thinking these are just aliens from other planets, right? But then from a flat Earth perspective, who are these people, do you think?
Well, from a flat Earth perspective, there's no space. There's no such thing as space. Okay,
right.
So there aren't aliens. So this is an interdimensional incursion, basically.
So do you think they're piercing our dimension and they're from some other dimension that could be existing, kind of like in a quantum space-time thing?
If you think of the flat Earth as a bubble of 3D time and space.
Okay.
Yeah. And if you think of it that way, and it's very difficult to get our heads around it because we are 3D time and space beings. So there is no such thing as outside of this bubble, because that would imply a place.
Okay, right.
And also imply time passing.
Okay.
But time passing and space only appears here.
Okay.
So beyond this place we can only conceptualize it as a different dimension.
Another dimension.
Yeah.
That would make sense to me.
Where there is no time or space.
Okay.
And as spiritual beings, we arrive here, and are incarnated here. And that moment that we arrive and incarnate here is the same moment that we leave.
Some other dimension.
From that perspective of outside of this dimension. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. I'm curious about because I come from I was just raised normal, not religious in any way. And then when I was about a freshman in high school, I was about 14, from 14 to about 23 or so, I was heavily religious, and this was all my own doing. It wasn't like my parents took me and I got into it. So I read the Bible back and forth. I must have read it like 4 times. Like, who's read the entire Bible? So I've actually read the Bible a few times. It's been so many years since I've stopped, but I'm just curious, like, is some of the Bible true, do you think? And some of it is more allegorical and some of it's more just stories?
No.
What do you think?
The Bible, the Old Testament, is absolutely real. With there's evidence of the events, that went on in the Old Testament. We're finding the actual evidence, physical evidence of them.
Okay.
So this is my opinion.
Excuse me.
This is my opinion. The New Testament is a manufactured fraud. By Romans.
Like the desire to, like Caesar's Messiah kind of stuff. Is that
essentially? Yeah.
Okay.
So the Old Testament is a story, and when you read it, and not see it as an allegory, or you don't read it through Christian spectacles. Yeah.
Right.
You see it's a story from from beginning to end. Right, there's no space for the New Testament.
So is it true, do you think, that Moses, who's the alleged author of the Torah, the first 5 books, if you look into the time that he was supposed to have lived, and you go into the 6,000-year theory of how old we are, he would have been writing about the events in Genesis 2,000 years after they supposedly happened. Mm-hmm. So what... Is that true? Do you think Moses was involved? I mean, because how do you make sense of all this stuff?
I take it literally. The kind of allegorical idea comes from the translation from Hebrew. Paleo-Hebrew, not the modern fake Hebrew, the Yiddish. Paleo-Hebrew being a pictographical, concrete language, and translated to an abstract symbolic language. Yeah, when you translate it, it comes across as a kind of allegory, type kind of story, fairy story type thing. But no, it's not. So the events in the Old Testament say that there was an incursion, foreign DNA was introduced into mankind, and that DNA. Those people were evil and psychopathic, basically.
You mean the offspring of the result of the DNA being introduced?
Yes.
Okay.
And these beings could only propagate by impregnating humans.
Okay.
And as they mixed more and more with humans, they got more human-like.
Okay.
The first ones were not human looking at all, and I see a parallel in the story of the film Alien.
I haven't seen that.
Not seen Alien?
No.
Okay, there's been 4 or 5 of the films.
There's been a lot of them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the parallel is there. A foreign entity coming in, and the only way it can propagate is by impregnating humans. And as it mixes more and more, it becomes more human-like. And in the 4th film, I think it's Alien Resurrection, the alien actually starts looking human. It's got a kind of skeletal human face,
head, and
the head is long, but it's kind of more in, and it looks more human. And this is what we see, because if you look back into the fossil record, as it were, that's the wrong word to use, but you'll find, so-called humans with long cone-shaped heads.
Yeah, we've seen those.
And they get smaller and smaller as they get closer.
Do you think, is the shape of those skulls, do you think, a result of like a cultural thing where they wrap them?
They say it's binding, but you find children with these
same
cone
things.
heads. Yeah, so yes, you get head binding to emulate the gods.
The actual, okay, so maybe the binding is a result of being exposed to people who look like that, and they wanted to emulate that.
Yes, because they were the ruling class.
You know what's crazy to think is, like, in the Bible it says in Genesis that the sons of God were introduced to the daughters of men because they were found pleasing to the eyes. Mm-hmm. And so it's interesting to me that like that at some point, like these creatures or these Nephilim were existing in, could you say, a spirit plane?
They were celestial beings.
They were celestial
human form.
So when they took on form, was it then that they found that the daughters of Ben were pleasing to them, or were they pleasing to them in their celestial form, and then they took form in order to? Because it's weird, like
I don't know how it works like that, but
yeah,
you know, if you look at the Book of Enoch, it goes into much more detail about the event. That 200 of them came down on Mount Hermon and swore a pact to do this.
How much is written in the Book of Enoch? Because Genesis, it's like a couple verses, and you're just thinking, like, what the hell is this?
But if you look in the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jasher.
Yeah,
I think Jasher. There's lots and lots more detail about it.
Yeah, I know. They've said that there's like pages and pages about it.
Yep.
Which is such a crazy thing, because if those books couldn't make it into the canonical scriptures, then what, you know what I mean? Like,
who decided what's canonical?
Right.
Romans,
right.
The enemies of the Israelites.
So if they didn't allow these books in, it's so bizarre to me that you could throw in like a verse that is so groundbreaking if it's true, but you don't expand on it at all. Well, that's crazy.
I think you know, when you're dealing with, you know, a book like the Old Testament, you know, it's a massive tome, really.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and people are trying to cut stuff out. I think it's inevitable that they're going to miss something.
How many other books are in the Old Testament? Because there's some books that were supposedly to have been written in between the Old and New Testament, and then there's like the 3rd Corinthians isn't in the New Testament, and there's some other letters of Paul, they say, that aren't in the New Testament, and then there's the Book of Enoch. There's the Gospel according to Thomas and Judas. So there's a lot of other books in the Old. There's
a whole bunch of books, 14 extra books called the Apocrypha.
Okay.
And they were introduced. They're actually in the original King James 1611.
Oh, really?
Bible. Yes, and it was taken out in the next edition of the King James.
Interesting.
So yes, I don't even these days. I don't even look at the New Testament. When I was reading the whole book. Yeah, I read it a few times, like you did.
The Old Testament?
Old Testament and New Testament, I read the whole lot. Yeah.
How many times?
A few times. Well, 4 or 5.
That's crazy, huh?
Because
takes a long time.
Every Sabbath, I read the Bible.
Okay.
So, what I noticed is, did you ever watch Lost?
Oh yeah. I never. Don't spoiler alert. I haven't made it all the way through.
Okay.
it's only been 10 years.
Imagine watching Lost. It goes for 7 seasons. Yeah. And you're watching the first 6 seasons, and you understand what's going on. Okay, you're making your own theories. You're feeling what's going on in the whole series.
Right.
And then the 7th and last season comes on, and it's written by a different writer, different director, who doesn't quite understand what the whole thing is about, and they introduce a character.
That's not even there.
It's not even there in the last one, but now they try and make it so that the whole thing was about this character.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how it felt when I read the whole book. Yeah, I got to the New Testament. It was like, this is different, and this is
completely different.
Completely different. The whole story in the Old Testament, it's about a bloodline. It's about following
the lineage,
particular people, all the way to the end. Yeah. And then all of a sudden there's this new character who's saying, no, it's not about them at all. It's about everybody, and this new. It's
so different too, because you get typically pastors will say the whole Old Testament is just a. What's the word that they've used? It's been so long since I've been to church, but it's like just a pointing. Like, you know, you have like Joseph in the Old Testament has all the same characteristics of Jesus, and so everything's like a foreshadowing. But you do read the New Testament; it's completely different than the Old Testament in terms of style, writing, everything.
And every time somebody points me to a verse in the Old Testament that says, "Oh, that's talking about Jesus," I go, hold on a sec, let me just read it. And just by using the rules of reading a book, you realize that no, it's not about Jesus. You know, if you open a book like Fight Club, for instance, and it says, He punched him so hard that he didn't wake up for 5. Or you go, okay, who are they talking about? So you've got to go back in the chapter to see where's the first time they use he, and just before that they'll give a name usually.
Yeah.
So you go back and Tyler Durden. That's who he is.
So
that's what I use to look at these verses. I go back in a chapter until the first time it says he,
and figure out what that is.
And it's usually talking about the children of Jacob.
Okay.
And every time somebody says, look at this verse, it's about Jesus, I go, okay, let me have a look. And I look, and I haven't come across an occasion so far that I can say, actually, yes, this is talking about somebody in the future. And I came to this without a horse in the race. Yeah,
that's how I am right now. I've completely stepped away. I'm open to everything, all possibilities.
If I saw any evidence of Jesus, I'd be a Jesus worshipper now.
So do you believe that Jesus didn't exist?
I believe that there might have been somebody who walked around preaching return to the 10 Commandments, but I think the story of Jesus has been fabricated and lifted from various other parts of the Old Testament and the Book of Enoch and other places.
I mean, I don't know about the Romans creating the story, like as far as what actually happened, I don't know. But it makes a lot of sense politically and in terms of control, that they would create a character named Jesus who just so happened to say, pay taxes to Caesar and render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, turn the other cheek, and don't fight back, and just, be a good citizen, don't sue. In the book of Corinthians, it talks about that in terms of what Jesus said. And it's like, it makes total sense. But the thing I can't figure out is, were the Jews at that time unable to be controlled, and that's why they needed something else, like a story of a Jesus to get them to believe in the Messiah that would tell them to do that?
No, I think it's because when you read in the Apocrypha, it's very clear that when the Most High is with them, with the, they're not Jews, but the Israelites, they're unstoppable. Yeah, they, the book of Joshua or the book of Maccabees, you'll see it all through that. Yeah, that they're unstoppable when the Most High is with them. But when the Most High turns his back on them, then they're prey. They can be taken, they can be enslaved, they can be, kicked around and anything, because the Most High isn't looking at them anymore. Yeah, because they're sinning. Now, the thing about Jesus is that if you pray to him, or you worship him, or you do anything with him, then you're breaking the first commandment. You're putting somebody in between, yourself and the Most High. So they're using very clever word magic, which is a characteristic of this bloodline. Yeah, they convince people that what you're doing is praying to the Most High through Jesus.
Right.
But what you're actually doing is praying to Jesus. So you're putting somebody before the Most High, breaking the first commandment.
What? How does the first commandment go? Thou shalt no other gods before me.
No other gods before me.
That's right.
Nobody before me.
And Jesus is God. Right,
that's according what they're saying.
Right, so Jesus is God, but they're saying that if you put, I guess it's really kind of bizarre because they're looking at the Trinity now and different entities.
Trinity didn't exist in the Old Testament.
Yeah, so it's like you got all this kind of weird wordplay that's going on there.
Yeah, it's word magic. Just the same as the English language is literally a manufactured word magic language.
Yeah,
it's a programming language of the human mind. That's what I'm researching at the moment and about language. And
I wanted to ask you about that. We have a few more minutes. Did my wife say she's going to come here? I think so, right?
Did, yeah.
Okay, so she'll probably knock on the door, hopefully. Okay. We'll just keep talking until she comes. What were you saying on the phone when I was talking to you about, you said that you've been studying language, and I was asking if it was the quantum language that David Wynn Miller talks about. You said it's beyond that. What are you studying in terms of language?
Well, I was kind of led by a really strange experience to look at Paleo-Hebrew.
Paleo-Hebrew.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm convinced now that it's the original language of man. Okay.
Of all men.
Of all humanity.
People. Okay.
Yes. Um,
Why are you convinced?
Well, one of the reasons is that if you look at Paleo-Hebrew and look at the characters and imagine, not imagine, but if you go west of Jerusalem, the area, you find that all the languages read left to right.
Left to right, okay.
Paleo-Hebrew reads right to left. Yeah.
Okay.
So all the languages west read left to right. Yeah, and they're symbolic languages. That means the letters don't mean anything. They're just shapes.
Okay.
Yeah? If you go east of Jerusalem, everything reads left to right. Right to left. Yeah, and they're all pictographical languages.
Right.
So you can
like
imagine
Chinese
all the
and Mandarin.
Chinese, Japanese, Arabic, Egyptian.
Does that assuming the Earth is a ball, just for a second, would that be Southern Hemisphere as well? Any countries, the whole, like if you just go
again,
all
you
the way?
have to think back to the old world, which again originally wasn't inhabited. Yeah, if you imagine the Tower of Babel, event. Well, all the languages got confused and spread out from that point.
And it says that in those days, in the days of Peleg, the Earth was divided.
Yes. So later on, that's when all the continents started.
Is that the
apart.
Pangea, do you think?
Yeah, that's what I take it as, because it's very clear that it says the Earth was divided. Not people. The actual Earth was divided.
So I have a thought about that, about the Tower of Babel. What do you think about this? If the Earth were a dome, if it were flat and if it's a dome, and there's some sort of barrier that's, I don't know what that barrier would be, but let's say before the Earth was divided and the Tower of Babel was near the edge somewhere.
Okay.
And if you were to be building a tower to try to reach God, which is what that whole Tower of Babel was, to try man's attempt to reach God, they say. If you're in the center of the dome, then it's probably impossible. But if you're on the side and somehow you're building that up and you're going to hit that dome, do you think that God actually thought that maybe they are able to breach the barrier, and that's why I have to destroy this?
I think that could be it.
Who knows?
I don't know, but
I mean, where was that Tower of Babel, I wonder?
Well, they're saying that it was in Iraq, that area,
and that's apparently where the Garden of Eden was. But what about the South Africa origin that people talk about?
Well, people might talk about it, but the point is that if the Old Testament is to be believed, and I absolutely believe it, then the whole of humanity went down to 8 people who sort of in kind of Syria, that Syria area, the Syria, Turkey area, Mount Ararat. The 8 people survived on the ark. So that's where this basic civilization came about. It started with those 8 people.
But in one of your videos, you've got some really cool videos, man. One of your recent ones I've watched a couple times is about that bloodline, about black people, white people, and all this stuff. And you were talking about this story, and you were saying that somehow that evil bloodline was able to make it through the flood through the which descendant, like
offspring.
Shem?
Yeah, it was the offspring, because a week before the flood, Noah had to find wives for his 3 sons.
That's right.
And the only wives that were available were corrupted ones. Wow. So literally, it's a whole story about DNA. So it was Ham and his wife. Their offspring were very corrupted. They were the ites in the Bible, so the giants and evil ones.
Ham.
Ham,
okay.
Yeah. Japheth, there were a couple of giants, so it didn't express itself very much in Japheth's line. Okay. But in Shem's, it didn't express itself at all.
Interesting.
So that was the blessed line, because it was the most human line.
Oh, okay.
And this fallen angel DNA expressed itself in Esau.
That's right, yeah.
So you got the twins born, Jacob and Esau. And did
they have different fathers, like you was talking about in the video?
No, same fathers, same father.
But you've talked about in that video, you're saying how that is possible, where a woman could have sex with two different guys relatively close to one another, and they could be twins, but they could have different fathers.
Yes, that happens.
That has happened, huh?
And I was explaining that when I was talking about Adam and Eve and Satan.
Okay.
Yeah, but in this case, it's the same father, but the DNA, which sometimes lays dormant in people, expressed itself in Esau.
In Esau.
Yeah,
okay.
so he had the genetic traits of the fallen angels, and that's how, again, through Esau's line and through Japheth and through Ham's, that's why these bloodlines have survived.
That's crazy. You know, it's crazy when you're talking about language and how language has been hijacked, basically. Even saying black people, white people, I feel like it's there's something that doesn't sit well with me when I hear that, because I mean, I don't know if this thing is completely black, but my skin is not white. Your skin is not black. I mean, so we're more similar than we are different in a way in terms of our skin color. Well, but if you're described as black and I'm described as white, I'm the opposite of you, and it makes a dissension. And
skin color is
it's weird.
It's a red herring. Okay,
yeah.
It's not about skin color. It's about bloodline. Yeah, most people don't know what bloodline they are.
Yeah,
okay?
Yeah.
Because I was saying in one of those videos that, for instance, the Irish were black people.
I know. I remember you said that. That's crazy.
I've been looking at old documents, and one book actually describes the noblemen in the court of Scotland and Ireland and England, and most of the people in that were described as tall black people with woolly hair and blah blah blah. But what's happened is that essentially ethnic cleansing happened. The first ethnic cleansing, not the first, but all the black people were shipped out, and all the women that remained were raped and essentially bred out.
When was this? When you were talking about back in the Old Testament times, or like
this is in England, Ireland, and Scotland. This was back in the 1600s and 1700s.
Okay.
Yeah, only maybe 5 to 10 generations.
Yeah, because you were saying that you had that cool quote. I love that movie in Braveheart where they instituted prima nocta, which is your way of allowing the bloodline to continue with these different people. Well,
allowing one bloodline to breed out another. Yeah, it's
so fascinating too, because it's like most people don't know any of that, and I just watched those particular videos just a while ago. But it's so fascinating what's probably true versus what we think is true, and we think, oh, black people were slaves and this, that, and the other. But it's like, man, you're talking about parts of in Africa, Timbuktu, and places where the cities were, massive and amazing. And certain black people, if you call them black, sold other black people to the Europeans, and it wasn't necessarily right.
Again, Ham's children, we're going
That's
back to
right.
Ham's children were the Africans.
Okay.
They are very different people to Shem's children, who are the Negroes, for want of a better word. Okay. So whenever the Israelites, who are Shem's children, were in trouble, most of them would run into Africa to hide amongst the Africans
because they were somewhat similar. Yeah. Right.
Okay. So and that's what happened in 70 AD when the Romans attacked. Yeah, about 1 million of these Negroes escaped into Africa. So
the people, the descendants of Shem, escaped the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD.
Yes.
Down to Africa through Egypt, to these areas of northern Africa, which were filled
through it, and then into West and
Africa.
South Africa, where they built these cities.
Yeah, these
in the wilderness.
How did you find all this information? Because
the information's out there. But unless you look for it, you won't find it. You won't. Nobody's going to volunteer this information.
Were you getting this information off the internet or old libraries, or where were you getting it?
I was getting in libraries. There's loads of books out there, but you have to go back
And find the titles, right? Or know what to look for.
And normally when you find one book, a good book about it, there's references to other books, and it's like a rabbit trail.
I mean, it's so crazy, right? Because we all know, people that are listening to this know that, history is written by the winners of wars. So no wonder why you have to search through God knows how many different manuscripts to find this kind of stuff, because it's always going to be suppressed.
Yeah, and I'm sure I was getting help, because I was reading one book, Nature Knows No Colour Line, and it was talking about a guy called Francis Barber, who was the manservant of a famous author. And almost immediately I got somebody sent me this documentary that was been on the BBC, and it was in my video.
Okay.
It was a guy who is the descendant of Francis Barber. Yeah.
Wow.
This black manservant. Yeah. And it was a white guy. And he was saying, Francis had a son called Enoch, and Enoch had a son called, and so on and so on. And that's my great grandfather.
Wow.
And this guy was, he just as white as you, and you wouldn't know that he was actually a descendant of Negroes.
So it's a bloodline. This whole thing is about a bloodline.
And the bloodline that rules this world has always said, if you've got one drop of Negro blood in you, then you're a Negro. And in fact, the definition in a
so
dictionary,
we'd all be that.
Not all, because not all of us, but most of us, are.
And they would be. So what you were saying was interesting. You're talking about some of the traits of these people that are come from the
Nephilim.
The Nephilim, yeah, the evil sort of characteristics. You're talking about people with like six fingers,
Mm-hmm.
Tails, blue eyes, lighter skin,
blonde or red hair.
Right. So I fit some of those descriptions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm on the same sort of journey you are. I'm trying to figure out what we're doing here. There's a million conspiracies. Are some of them true? Are all of them true? I'm trying to figure out what we're all doing here, and want to do my best to help the world be a better place. So how does that fit with that, do you think? Like, how does it all work together, do you think? Like, you could say there's really good men in the world and really bad men, and there's really good women and really bad women. And even though women or men, they could be good or bad, even though they have these characteristics of being a man or woman. Is it like that?
Well, we've been given instructions on how to live here. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
We've been given instructions on what's good and what's not good. Okay,
Right.
And I totally believe that the deciding factor is wickedness. And wickedness is whether you can stick to those commandments and statutes, and whether you can't.
Okay.
And there are people in the world who could not live according to the Ten Commandments. And I've spoken to quite a few pastors and reverends, and they say, "Oh, it's impossible to keep the Ten Commandments."
Especially if you're looking at the heart.
Yeah. But you know what? It's not. I find it very easy not to steal or lie or kill people.
I know, right? It's pretty easy.
Yeah, but there are people who are convinced that it's not easy, and so that gives them a pass to keep doing it.
Yeah.
And that's what Jesus is all about. It's giving people a free pass to do whatever they want, do what they are willed.
Well, in the New Testament, he talks about if your eye causes you to sin by looking at a woman with lust, then you should cut it out. So pastors will say, well, he's talking about the spirit of the law, not just the actual actions that you take. So he's taking a level deeper. So that would be the opposite of what you just said about,
no.
right?
What I'm saying is what this Jesus character did was redefine the law, yeah?
Okay,
Which
right.
he can't do, because the Most High defined it. So how can he redefine it?
Yeah.
In the Old Testament, it tells you what adultery is.
Right.
It doesn't say that if you look at somebody and go, oh, she's nice.
Yeah, it doesn't say that.
No, it doesn't say that. He created that idea.
Oh, okay. So you're saying, so if he's created by the Romans or some other political entity, like it's a possibility, then all of that is kind of moot.
Yeah, it's making it. Nobody gives you a set of rules that you can't follow. It's ridiculous. The
Well-
Most High might as well say, thou shalt not breathe.
Well, I mean, that's part of the whole thing of the New Testament
New
Christianity
Testament,
is that
yes.
you can't keep the commandments, and that's why there's Jesus.
No, well, that's
Right.
the point. But
Right.
but the commandments, yes, you can. If you're a human, yeah. If you're a regular human, yes, you can keep the commandments and not kill, steal.
Right. I don't have a hard
everybody.
time with that at
Right.
all. It's like,
Right.
yeah.
But if you believe that there's somebody that's giving you a free pass, then you're free to be wicked.
Yeah, you can do
And-
anything you want.
But also, we're in a society that not only legalizes wickedness, it almost promotes it. You only have to put the television on for 10 minutes and you'll see murders,
yeah.
all these fake idols pretending to get away with breaking commandments without consequence.
Yeah, I mean, it's not almost promoting it; it's promoting it.
Yes.
For sure.
All of it.
Yeah.
So this is, so if you go along with this wicked society, then you know what? Remember in the free man movement, silence is acquiescence.
Right.
If you
Yeah.
don't say anything, you don't take
You
a
agree.
stand, you're agreeing with it.
Mm-hmm.
So you're making your choice.
Right.
Somebody said, better make a choice because the devil owns the fence. Yeah?
Wait, what? Say that again?
You better make a choice because the devil owns the fence.
Oh, I
Yeah.
like that.
So if you don't say anything, you go along, then you've made your choice.
Yeah.
You've got to separate yourself from this wicked society, yeah, and live well, live according to the commandments.
So your contention is that Jesus in the New Testament didn't necessarily exist, or maybe he did, but
Somebody existed maybe that was saying go back to the commandments, but the story that you're given in the New Testament is a fabrication, and I was about to, I haven't got around to it, but I was about to do a video just about Jesus.
oh wow,
All the contradictions I found, there's 3 different genealogies for him, and none of them apply to him. Yeah.
interesting. It is interesting though. You look at like all the genealogies in the Bible, like you look at the genealogies in the New Testament and the Old Testament. They're all over the place, and it's like what you're saying. It's all a bloodline.
Well, it's a New Testament, so it's contradictory. There's one genealogy in Matthew, another one in Luke that are two different genealogies. The one in Matthew includes somebody who's cut off, who's told that you and your seed will never be kings of
The one in Matthew
Israel
says
anymore.
that.
The one in Matthew says that. The one in Luke again goes a different route and gets to Joseph a different route.
Wow.
But then in the 1611, there's a genealogy chart that has the same genealogy as in Luke, but it goes to Mary instead. So
Wow.
now you've got 3 different genealogies.
In the 1611 is from the King James Bible
Yes.
back then.
Yeah, the original King James is 1611.
Wow.
And when you point out the problems with the genealogies, yeah, the Christian will step back and go, oh yeah, but it's Mary. It's all through Mary.
Right.
Because Joseph didn't contribute any DNA
Right.
to
It
Jesus.
can't come through him because
Right. So they say, oh, it's Mary who's of the tribe of Judah.
Okay.
But when you look at the text again in Luke, it tells you that Mary was a Levite.
Really?
Yes, because her cousin was Elizabeth, and that was for earlier in Luke. It says her cousin's Elizabeth. Elizabeth is a Levite, married to a Levite, because Levites only marry Levites.
Okay.
And this Elizabeth was Mary's cousin, so she had to be a Levite.
How bizarre.
So yeah, there's so many things. If you look at the story of Judas,
Uh-huh.
there's 2 ways he died. 2
Yeah.
completely different ways.
Yeah.
You try and point that out to a Christian, they'll come up with all these weird stories about how maybe and so no, it's I've got a whole file full of these contradictions and stuff
Yeah.
that say it can't be true.
Yeah, I used to a long time ago go through all those things and study and come up with answers as to why those contradictions are not true.
Mm-hmm.
But since then I've just sort of kind of lost interest a little bit in all that and just kind of opened my mind a lot.
I'm thinking
you
that
know?
this is more important than we can possibly imagine. Yeah, we think we're walking around doing, and this is all sort of, just so, but no, there's the Bible is telling us. Its real name is the Book of Remembrance. Okay, it's the Book of Remembrance.
Where does it say that?
It says in Malachi.
Malachi.
Yeah, the last.
Oh, yeah, that's right. The last book of the Old Testament.
The people sat round and they thought about the Most High.
That's right.
And they wrote a book of remembrance.
That's right.
Yeah. So the Old Testament is a book of history, law, and guidance, because there's nothing new under the sun. So all the tricks and traps of the enemies of the Israelites, are all detailed in the Old Testament, and they're being repeated over and over again. Yeah. Right now, Planned Parenthood is responsible for 15 million deaths of black people. Yeah, since it started. Yeah. Same thing as the pharaohs ordering, death of the male children.
Right.
Yeah? Same thing. It's same thing. Just different.
Different times, different organizations,
different methodologies.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we have to go. I could talk all day with you.
Tons I wanted to say as
well. But, yeah. All right. So, where can people find you on the website?
I've got a website, allegedlydave.com. It will be revamped very soon. But I've got also a YouTube channel, which is dmurphy25.
And that's linked to from allegedlydave.com, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So people can subscribe. You got a lot of cool videos on there, lots of cool stuff. I was just watching some of the most recent ones, the oldest ones about free energy and those devices that you were doing. So you got a lot of cool stuff on there. Awesome. All right. Thanks, Dave, for being on.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.